It is indeed the 20th edition. This is my 6th or 7th edition of standing in front of city debates as the dean, but I've been attending city debates for the 21 years and the 20 editions that it's had. It's truly wonderful to invite you all here.
So this 20th edition of City Debates is taking place during an exceptional year for the Arab world, from Palestine to Lebanon, from Sudan to Yemen. The region we live in is chaotic, one of uprisings, wars, armed conflict.
Why city debates in the first place? And why disruptions? And disruptions came with the idea perhaps of bringing together all the themes that we had in the previous years and bringing them together and trying to readdress them in a more integral way as forces that disrupt the progressive potential of our profession.
Sumud in Arabic is a term that translates most often in English to steadfastness, but it encompasses concepts and experiences of perseverance, survival, determination, and much more. It has come to be a central identifying characteristic, of course, of the Palestinian struggle for liberation, and is used widely to express duration with purpose.
So really, the housing crisis in the country is a combination of multiple things. And these issues are leading to really alarming shift in the histories of the architectural history of the city. We are seeing a disappearance of green spaces, increased pollution, and there's many, many layers of economic, social, and political crises that we really do not even know the extent of. I wanted to speak of ecocide. Ecocide pertains to the destruction of ecosystems, and it's conceived as part of the genocide-ecocide nexus as a method of genocide if this environmental destruction results in conditions of life that fundamentally threaten a social group's cultural and or physical existence.
We use the term insurgency, not because they're revolutionaries, but it's much more in line with the traditional American-based social movement literature, which uses insurgents or challengers sort of synonymously as collective actors who mobilize collectively in contentious politics to achieve certain types of goals.
But what's often missing from this celebratory narrative is the historical context that enabled and shaped these developments, which is that Tel Aviv was conceived as a colonial town from the start. It was founded in 1909 by a group of Zionist colonists who had just arrived to Palestine, and their idea was to form, and I quote, a Hebrew urban center in a healthy environment and planned according to the rules of aesthetics and modern hygiene.
BUL has mobilized before in response to disasters and urban traumas, and Gaza was not an exception, but was rather a calling of a severe need for us to emotionally and intellectually engage. Drawing nonetheless upon the lab's collective experience and its position on recovery, members of the BUL had already engaged with post-war and post-disaster sites and accumulated a wealth of experience with multiple sites of different contexts. But all of that was humbled when we came to Gaza.
We cannot understand decolonization in Palestine without ending in refugee camps, right? So we end in refugee camps, and we immediately made that connection that in some way the colonial discourse in refugee camps is to keep us all, I would not say only refugees, but us all, and Gaza is a very strong witness on that, as victims. So we are we are put within that frame of victimhood, and that is the only way where we can imagine ourselves, right?
So this is a kind of, there's a kind of problem there for the literature to explain how these cities work and how the politics and the policies of these cities work and how these institutions work. Better understand, this is my point of departure, to better understand their politics, their policies, and their political institutions, we must root these cities historically.
And the state building project explicitly attempts to create, master plan, and map sort of a middle class through these interventions in the landscape. The middle class also contributes to the state building project, and many Palestinians are waiting for opportunities and places where they can extract a normal, stable life. They do it through debt, through sort of new state institutions and new types of housing, planned housing, that potentially provide new long-term.
What happens in Palestine with regards to infrastructure is, I think, distinct of state disinvestment accounts that we often see, the scholarly accounts where they talk about state disinvestment due to neoliberalism, urban warfare strategies confined to wartime, or lack of funding and political will to extend national development across peripheral regions.
Focusing on the squatter areas in Istanbul, we map out breaking these path-breaking trajectories in institutional and policy contexts, concluding that the authoritarian entrepreneurial governance landscape operates in a dual context. While it creates regulatory tools to bypass locally elected democratic authorities, the municipality, it also repoliticizes urban communities in unexpected ways.
So the spontaneous and unregulated land invasions by revolutionary organizations and the arbitrary appropriation and distribution of land contributed extensively to the peripheral urbanization of Tehran and the transformation of hundreds of townships and villages outside Tehran's city boundaries. By the 1990s, the fantasy of egalitarian urbanism that was presented to people post-1979 revolution turned into a socio-spatial catastrophe.
Local government successfully upgraded its space infrastructure and also part of the sectors. It also articulates various effects of financialization as well as public debts. As actually today, Wuhan was somehow ranked quite high on the list of China's cities.
If urban planning tools could be not that strong in the major case, we could see how, thanks to agencies, the state re-centralize, take the power and make and create agencies in order to manage the most important project.
This battle was not raging in traditional political arenas, however. Rather than agitate for familiar redistributive policies like housing subsidies, exclusive land grants, or rent controls, urban protagonists were relying on the subtle, quiet machinations of urban planning and design to redistribute and restrict access to the city's housing.
As energy production facilities that would appear quickly when necessary and disappear when the countries no longer needed their assistance, floating power plants would pave the way for producing renewable energy. In a global and regional context where the telos of development has lost its credibility, the narrative of energy transition reintroduced such imaginations of linear progress.
We will look at the master plan of the state, what the state tried to learn from the gated communities. This is where actually all the models of worlding, the interreferential Dubai model, did not work. And actually, we have multiple timelines of interruption and remaking and unmaking because of learning from things that happened in the gated communities. Then we look at the infrastructure return, the financialization as an incomplete bandwidth of planning. Then we will look at the optics of financing, the spectacular versus the everyday, agency, disruptions, a post-colonial history, and then the urbanization of the oppressed, politics of the maybe, the urban passant, the cruel politics of becoming, and what do we do when we are entangled in the middle of things.
And interesting to us to see here on the right, these kind of different typologies are not necessarily linear. So the transformation that was going on, that was always taking, always changing according to the family structure, to marriage, to divorce, to all these kind of things, affected how the space was being, constructed. Now, at the same time, the camp itself was being also dissolving, was in a way changing. So this you can see here, the communal latrines, they were gradually disappearing. Of course, people were taking the elements to construct, the dwelling, the new space. Even some of these disappeared completely, and the management of the camp had to look at Google Maps and try to allocate them for the donor. Like look here, we had one that we don't know where it disappeared. So, this is how they disappeared. People
we're actually using the material to construct, the space of the dwelling.
We wanted, when we conceived this edition, to unpack the multiple intertwined forces that are disrupting cities and urbanisms and governance and people lives today, and to explore the logics and illogics that structure these forces.